After a brief excursus to talk about what might await the faithful communities that would come after Jesus' death and resurrection, Mark plunges us back into the Passion narrative and moves us with breakneck speed through the Passion, transporting us back and forth to different locations to the point where we're not always sure where we are. We start out with the plot to kill Jesus at the hands of the chief priests and the scribes. And then we find ourselves in the suburbs, at the house of Simon the leper, where Jesus is eating dinner. The strange woman comes in, anoints his head with very costly perfume, sparking off this controversy about poverty and waste. The next thing we know, we're getting ready for the Passover. And Jesus sends the disciples into town to make ready. Kind of a cloak and dagger thing. Follow the man with the water jar, and he will lead you to the room. It is while they are eating the Passover that Jesus announces that one of them will betray him. Of course, this arouses much speculation as to who it might be. He says, one of you, obviously, so close that you can dip your bread in the same bowl as I. They all declare that they will never, ever betray him. It is during dinner that Jesus takes bread, breaks it, gives it to his disciples, and says to them, "Take, this is my body." And then he takes the cup and gives thanks and gives it to them all, and they all drink from it. "This is my blood, the blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many. But I won't drink it again until I come into the kingdom." When they'd finished worship and sung the last hymn, he took them across the Kidron Valley to the Mount of Olives, overlooking Jerusalem. And there he quoted scripture, "They will strike the shepherd, and the sheep will scatter." Peter, good old Peter, impetuous Peter, foot and mouth Peter, says, if everybody else deserts you, I will not desert you. Oh, Peter, you idiot. By the time the cock crows twice tomorrow morning, you'll have denied me 3 times. Oh, God forbid. Even if I must die, I will not desert you. And the others said the same thing. We'll see how that goes. He takes Peter, James, and John into the garden called Gethsemane, and there asks them to stay awake and watch. We've heard those words recently. He goes deeper into the garden himself and prays, "Abba, Father, Daddy, if there's any way we can get out of this, please. But in the end, it's your will, not mine, be done." 3 times he goes out to look on the disciples, and they're sound asleep. They cannot stay awake and watch. Doesn't bode well for the communities that will follow, if the disciples can't even stay awake and watch. The last time, Judas shows up with the crowd, the mob, brandishing swords and clubs. Judas has cued him in. He goes to Jesus, "Rabbi," and he kisses him, the sign. They seize him. There's a fight that breaks out. The slave of the high priest, his ear gets cut off. And there's this strange young man who's dressed only in his underwear, just a linen cloth. They try to seize him, and he runs off, leaving the cloth behind, running into the darkness naked. Still trying to figure that one out. They take Jesus to the high priest, and there they've set up a kangaroo court. They can't even get the witnesses, however, to agree on testimony, and so they eventually ask Jesus, "Are you the Messiah?" "Well, of course I'm the Messiah." "Not only that, but you will see the Son of Man come in the clouds with great power and authority. The chief priests tore his clothes, said, "That's it, we're done. He's condemned himself. We don't need any more testimony. He's blasphemed. It's over." Now meanwhile, Peter's been down in the courtyard, warming himself by the fire with the others that have gathered there. And over the course of the night, he does exactly what Jesus says. He denies ever knowing Jesus. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. And when he hears that cock crow the 2nd time, he breaks down and weeps. The next morning, they take Jesus before Pilate. It seems that Roman law prohibits the Jews from condemning a man to death, or at least executing the sentence, and so must do it themselves. But not before another hearing. "Are you the king of the Jews?" This is the charges they bring against you, Jesus, Pilate asks. "You say that I am." "Well, you've heard the charges. How do you answer them?" And Jesus is silent. Pilate's amazed. Now, during the festival, it's Pilate's custom to release one of the prisoners. And so he has this prisoner, Barabbas by name. He's rather notorious. He was caught in the last insurrection, last uprising against Rome, killed someone. He asked the crowd, "Who do you want me to release, Barabbas or this king of the Jews?" They demand Barabbas. "Well, what do you want me to do with the king of the Jews?" And they cry out, "Crucify him, crucify him." And so Pilate hands him over to be crucified. The soldiers take him, dress him in a purple robe, put a crown of thorns on him, mock him, beat him, and then lead him away to be crucified. They compel Simon of Cyrene, Alexander and Rufus's dad, to carry the cross. And they take him to the place called Skull Hill, Golgotha. They offer him a sedative, but he won't take it. They divide his clothes. It's 9 o'clock in the morning when they crucify him, and they hang him there on the cross between 2 others. Everybody mocks him, those that hang with him. "Tear the temple down," you said, "and you'd build it in 3 days. If you could do that, getting down off the cross should be a piece of cake. If you're the Messiah, let's see your stuff. Come on down." Now about noon, darkness covered the whole earth until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And at 3 o'clock, Jesus cries out with a loud voice, "Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani." My God, why have you forsaken me?" The crowd standing there think that he's calling for Elijah, and they get all excited to see what Elijah might do. But Jesus just breathes his last. And the temple curtain is torn in 2 from top to bottom, exposing the Holy of Holies. So does this mean that we now have access to God? Or does it mean that God has left the building? Have to think on that one. Meanwhile, the centurion at the foot of the cross, on seeing all this, exclaims, "Truly, this is God's Son." You see, it's only in Jesus' death that someone finally gets it right. It's God's Son. A different kind of Messiah. A different King of the Jews. There were women who were watching all this from a distance. Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of James the Younger and Joses, and Salome. They'd been following Jesus for some time now throughout Galilee, and they'd come with other women who had cared for him over the years to Jerusalem. When evening had come, Joseph of Arimathea, a respected member of the council, but also a seeker after the kingdom, asked for the body to be buried, since it was the day of preparation, that is, the day before the Sabbath, and they should take care of these things. When Pilate had ascertained that Jesus was indeed dead, he handed the body over to Joseph to be buried. And Joseph took a linen cloth, wrapped Jesus' body in it, laid it in a rock tomb, and rolled a stone over the door of it. Now the women saw where they laid him. Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Joses, were there. Now the first day of the week, when the sun had risen, get that, when the sun had risen, the women went to the tomb, Mary Magdalene and Joses, and Mary, the mother of Joses, and James, and Salome. They took spices to anoint his body. They wondered who would roll the stone away, because it was pretty massive. But when they got there, the stone was rolled away, and on entering the tomb, they discovered there was a young man there. He said, "Do not be afraid. You're looking for Jesus of Nazareth. He's not here. He has been raised. He's going ahead of you to Galilee, like he told the disciples. Go tell them he will meet them there." Well, the women run out of the tomb, and for terror and amazement had seized them. And they run away and tell no one. And tell no one. What an ending. It's not really the story we know. What about all the appearances? He just drops the story. It's like somebody interrupted him or tore the last page out. It was so disconcerting that throughout history others have tried to amend the end of Mark's gospel. There are a few endings that were accepted for a while. But it's general speculation. This is how it ends. They run away and don't tell anybody. You know, the truth is, I think Mark intended it that way. He's worked so hard to suck us into that story. We become part of it. And at the end, we can't dislodge ourselves. We too protest. Well, who's going to tell the story? It's when I hear Mark chuckle. It's in your lap, folks. It's a story that won't get told unless you tell it. That's your job. It's the task of Mark's community. It's the task of the church. It's our task to keep on telling the story over and over again to those who, as the song goes, know it best, as well as to those who have never heard. It's our job. We better get to it.